Hey guys, I'm Jody.
I'm Justin.
And we are Board Game Perspective, and we are taking a look at 4 different games today, and some with expansions. So a 4-game mini review. So what do we have here?
We're going to start with España 1936. That's España 1936.
This is from Devere, and all of these games, by the way, are review copies. So this is from Devere, and what else you got?
We're also going to be taking a look at Atlantis Rising with the Monstrosities expansion.
Alright, and then we have, and that's from Elk Creek Games, we got the White Castle from Devere.
Also from Devere.
Yes, and then also Honey Buzz and the Honey Buzz Fall Flavors expansion. So, we're going to basically take a look at each one, kind of do a quick overview. This is definitely not how to play. Quick overview, our thoughts, and yeah, we're going to talk about all these. So let's get right into it. Here we go. España 1936 is a simulation game for 2 players that recreates the events that occurred in Spain between July 1936 and April 1939, which saw the conflict between 2 different ways of conceiving Spain at that moment. The goal of each side is to win the war by taking control of territories. España 1936 is played in 10 turns, and each turn, players are going to be following multiple steps. The first thing is going to be simply drawing cards on your turn, and depending on which round you're in, you might draw a different number of cards.
Then you're going to go into the movement phase, in which the nationalists are first going to do all of their movements, and once they've done all of their movements, then the Republican side is going to do all of theirs in response.
And there's multiple kinds of units that have different kinds of movement. So you have military units, and you have like tanks and airplanes. And after you play a few rounds, it's easier to understand. You kind of get the hang of the way things go. You know, for instance, tanks, they have to be with military units. They're kind of like a support unit. Then after both sides have moved all the units that they want to, then you get to assign your generals. And you only do battles, or you only can do battles if you choose to, where the generals have been assigned.
And the generals are assigned alternating in a way such that one player is going to place one, then the other one's going to place one, and you do that until you're out of generals to place.
Yeah, so there are multiple zones on the board. So there's a lot of territories that you're trying to figure out where to go. So you got to choose wisely on your battles, because you only have a handful of generals.
Next, you're going to move into the fighting of the battles. So alternately, you're going to choose a place where you placed a general, and you're going to choose that city in order to fight the battles. You're going to move all your pieces and all the pieces of your opponent from that city into the combat zone board, where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little flow chart, and kind of just organizes all your units so you can figure out who's battling who. And you might have some support units like tanks and airplanes, and if both sides have airplanes, though, at the beginning of the battle, there will be a dogfight, so the airplanes duke it out and see who survives. Mm-hmm. And so the battle phase, you can play a card if you like that could potentially add dice or be basically modifiers for your dice roll. Yeah. But you are going to be rolling dice based off of how many dice your units allow, and usually fives and 6 are hits, but of course you might have modifiers. Right. So there's definitely going to be some dice rolling and battling it out, and so you basically just take turns back and forth, going through all your cities that have generals and battling it out. And then that's the battle phase. And then after that, you can play up to 3 cards, taking turns back and forth. You're going to be doing event cards if you want. And usually, if you have any cards left, this is a good thing, because you need more units out on the board, and this is one way to do it. Or get more generals recruited to your supply. So event cards are important if you have cards left.
If you haven't used them all up in the battle phase, yeah. Then you move into the maintenance phase, which is where you kind of take a look at what all is on the board, and you're trying to figure out where you have control over certain objective cities, and where the other person has control, and where you have shared control over those
contested, I think, is what the
contested control was. And that helps to determine what the score is at the end of that round.
And potentially game-ending victory conditions. And then after that, some rounds you will have replacement phase, where you can get a handful of replacement points to spend to get out more units to help your cause. because you might be dying. So this is very important. So definitely need to get out units during this phase.
Yeah.
Now this game does have different ending conditions and different for the nationalists versus Republicans. But straight up, there is victory by conquest if someone gets all 8 objective territories and has at least 8 spaces connected, then they automatically win.
And one of the ways that the Nationalist Party could actually win early is if they control Madrid outright before the end of the 3rd round.
Turn 3, yeah.
Turn 3. So that's one way that the Nationalists could win. The one way that any of the parties could win is that they control Barcelona, Madrid, and Sevilla, all at one time. So that's another ending condition that could cut the game short before the end of the 10th round.
And if you make it all the way to 10 rounds with no one winning, then if Republicans have at least 4 objective territories and at least 8 spaces connected, then the Republicans will win the game.
So this box actually contains some expansion material as well, including La Armada. And this includes some naval bases and some submarines and different things like that, and different cards that are going to create different movements and different things that go on during the game.
Yeah, other ships, and there's just additional sequences, different ways those items move, and for instance, like different kind of battles versus ships, or subs versus ships, and airplanes versus ships. So there's additional naval content in this here package. All right, so our thoughts. What did you think about this game? Well, actually, let's preface this. So we like 2-player war-themed games, but we've only ever done really simple, like the small box, like Blitzkrieg, World War II in 20 minutes, like stuff like that. That's kind of been our genre, and we've wanted to try some longer 2-player war games because we've liked the shorter ones.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this one?
So I enjoyed like the war tactic and how the game is actually played. There's a little bit of frustration with it due to the luck that might be involved with the dice rolling and all of that kind of stuff. And when you get a little frustrated by that and the game goes as long as it does, it can end up being extra.
Did that bother you? I think it was mainly me that was bothered this time.
Your luck was worse than mine.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
So I would say that all the times that we played this game, her luck was worse
Man,
than
it was
mine.
bad.
It was rough.
It was so bad, guys. I mean, and there are ways to mitigate the luck. If you have modifiers and support units and such, or play some cards. But that really doesn't do much if you're constantly rolling 1s and 2s. I mean, now I did roll some hits, but I rolled a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s, and that just makes it hard. And that over a long period of time, I was really frustrated.
You were getting pretty mad.
I was frustrated with that, but also frustrated because I'm really not good at these tactical war games. I enjoy it, which is weird, but it's like this weird, I don't know, like love-hate relationship where I enjoy it, but then I'm so frustrated, especially when it's an extended gameplay. Like this is a long game, and I think that I get too frustrated toward the end because my mind struggles with tactical games.
Yeah, I think overall the game is really, really good. I like how there are different ways you can win. There's different phases. If, like I said, the Republican or the Nationalist can win by the 3rd round if they just completely overrun Madrid. So that's one way that it could end really fast. And then there's this other way that the Republicans could win automatically. And there's just a lot of kind of different mechanisms for actually winning. So you have to be paying attention to multiple different things. And I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of this game. I think, like, the first half of the game, I'm having a good time. And then the second half, I'm starting to get just frustrated because I'm not doing good. I struggle with these games. But I like the concept and the idea of it. I think people would like this game. If you like war games and you don't mind longer ones or a little bit of dice rolling, I think this is one to try.
Yeah.
Just because I'm like struggling with it with some aspects, I think it's just my issue of struggling with tactical games.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, I think it's the mechanism of actually resolving the battles. I think is really good, and they've got the board that makes it pretty clear.
I really like that board,
and so
it's really nice to have.
It makes it pretty clear about what you need to do and how you go through that process.
Helpful.
But once you roll the dice, it's up to luck, and so it can there's a good and bad to the mechanism.
Yeah, you were rolling at least 1 or 2 hits every roll.
Again, it was very much luck based, and luck was more on my side. So I can see how it was very, very frustrating for her.
I want to like this game because I love the concept of it. I love all the different territories. I love the different, like you said, the different ways to win. So you can have different strategies. You can try to cut off, the other players so they don't have like 8 connected. And there's just so many different strategies.
Yeah. For myself, this was my own thing. There's components in different languages, so I played in Spanish. It was kind of fun, but it was also she had a rule book in English, I had a rule book in Spanish, so we could both have a rule book that we were checking on things. Obviously, it's a Spanish publisher, so they've got both of those.
So overall, you like this?
I liked it more than she did, but I think that
the length is.
I think it has to do with the length and the luck combination, and you just had bad luck.
Yeah. I think we might go towards some shorter war-themed games. That is España 1936. In Honeybuzz, you are one of Her Majesty's accountants, entrusted to efficiently manage your own portion of the hive and worker bees. By assigning your worker bees to expand the hive, you will create empty cells for storing different nectars. Eventually, those nectars will produce honey, which you can sell at the bear market or use to complete orders. The Fall Flavors is an expansion that introduces 5 new modules for Honeybuzz. You can mix and match to use these modules in numerous combinations. So let's start with the base game. So on your turn, it's basically kind of a simple turn. You're going to either place out a worker and take a tile, or recall your worker bees.
And that's it. So, but if you are doing kind of the meat of the game, which is taking a tile, what you're going to do is you're going to use those tiles to create your hive, and you're going to be creating that hive, which is going to create empty cells, which you will then potentially be filling with nectar.
Yeah, so the one way you get that is taking the forage action, where you move your little token around and you can collect nectar tiles, but it has to kind of match the pattern that's been created by that empty cell in your hive, and then you can put the nectar tile there. And then another action is going to help you produce honey on those nectar tiles. So you're going to place out your little fan, and any nectar tiles that are adjacent to that fan token will produce honey on those nectar tiles.
Once you've produced that honey, you can then go to the market and sell that, and that will get you points at the end of the game.
Yeah, you can either complete orders or sell the honey separately, or pollen. So the actions are forage, which we just went over, and produce, and the market. And there's also the new bee, where you can recruit new workers with the little baby bee symbol on your tiles. And then there is the decree, which is
wild.
Yes, he loved getting that, and he loved getting the accounting action tiles.
Free money.
Which gives you 5 points whenever you completed your hive. So if you place a last hive tile that kind of creates that little hive with the empty cell, that's when you get to trigger all of the actions. So it's kind of cool. You got to plan out, what actions you want, and you got to close off the areas that you want. There's definitely some puzzly thinking in there. So you're just going to keep taking turns until the game end is triggered, and usually it's triggered by either a stacks of the market orders being completed, or several of the honeys in the market have reached the bottom. Then that will trigger the end of the game. You calculate up your points. And you can also score points through the Queen's Contest, which are objectives that are in the middle of the board. So there's ones that are races. So during the game, the first person to achieve the goal will get the 20 points. And then depending on the player count, you might have more rewards. And there might be some in-game objectives as well.
Now, inside of the Fall Flavors box, you're going to get a few different expansions that are going to add a little bit of a variety to your gameplay. Some of the expansions include the Autumn Leaves. You've got the Fall Fruit board. These are some of the ones that we played with.
You played with. I got to play all of them.
You played with some more.
Yeah.
So I played with those.
And
they definitely added some new things to it for sure.
Yeah, and every game with this expansion also uses I think it's called the Sunset module. That's basically a new time tracker for the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever the sun token gets all the way to the end, then that triggers the end of the game. So the fall fruit board, it's gorgeous. So it has a whole new foraging area, a new market, and there's a new spot where you can complete fruit orders. Mm-hmm. And instead of pollen, you are going to be trying to collect pumpkins, pears, and apples. Mm-hmm. And the foraging area is where you can go around, and if you're adjacent to these fruit tiles, you can now collect fruit. And it's fun because you can sell them individually at the markets, but if you have a set of all three, you get even more points.
True story. So we definitely implemented that, and it makes a big difference when you can sell all three at one time, because you get a big old chunk of points really fast.
And the autumn leaves that you mentioned are just more hive tiles that have leaves on them, and then there's a foliage scoring card. So based off that objective, you might want to get certain pairs of colors of leaves, or you usually get at least 1 point per leaf, and there's just different objectives with that. And the two you didn't try were the nectar caps, which is a way to basically cap one of your nectar tiles to get points, but then that means it cannot produce honey. And if you have the most at the end of the game, you will get a trophy, which gives you more points. Ooh. And then the other one was the Harvest Festival board, where you can retire worker bees. So, this can be useful toward the end of the game. So if you have a lot of bees and you want to get some more actions or get more points, you can place one of your available worker bees onto the board and either do a decree action, which is like a wild action, or claim one of the toasts. And the toasts are going to give you coins, which is points at the end of the game. What are your thoughts about this game? Well, actually, let's first start with the base game. What did you think about the base game?
I thought it was pleasant. It's obviously really pretty. I mean, if you look at the artwork, it's just fantastic, and the colors, and it's just vibrant on the table, and it's just pleasant. It's a medium weight kind of game where you don't have to think too hard, but you can really enjoy it, and there's still a little bit of strategy to make you feel like you're doing some work. I mean, it's good. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel like we both, that's just kind of the words that we kind of thought of to describe this. Just a pleasant, puzzly game.
Yeah.
And it's definitely some economic stuff because you are selling to the market. I don't know. I thought this is a really nice package. We actually played this a few years ago.
3 years ago, maybe?
And I really didn't remember much of that gameplay. Definitely was excited to try this again. Now I know what all the buzz is about.
Ha!
Yeah, so this production is outstanding. Elf Creek Games always does a great job with overall production. I've always been a huge fan. Just the art, the layout, the quality, the components. Don't get me started about the components in this game. The honey, they're like squishy, and they give me some vibes of like those Everdell berries
and the little beeples.
And yes, that there are beeples in there. So I really enjoy this game a lot. What about the expansion?
It added another level of complexity that it made me think a little bit more, but it wasn't over the top. So I felt like at least the parts that I played.
The two you played like two main ones. Yeah.
So you've played all of them. Did you feel like the ones that I didn't play added even more complexity? It was a little bit further into...
I actually got to play with all of the content
at one time.
Yes, we played all of the expansion modules at one time, and I really enjoyed it. Okay. Which is not typical. I usually don't like a lot of expansions that have like, you can do this module or this module or this module. You can kind of pick and choose. I usually just like, here's what you're supposed to do. But I really did enjoy I think all of the modules. Yeah, it just added a new way to score points. The festival board was a cool idea where you can retire a worker. If you have lots of bees at the end of the game, you really don't need them per se. You can put them to use by retiring them. Yeah, I really did enjoy it. And the aesthetic, I mean, the fall theme is gorgeous. And don't get me started on these components either, because they're even cooler. I mean, the pumpkins, pears, and apples. Mm-hmm. Well, what is it? It's not resin, is it? I don't know what the materials. I don't know, but like they are so cool, guys. I am definitely a fan of this game and definitely a fan of the components. If you do like this base game and you haven't tried the expansion, I would definitely give it a try. I'm not always an expansion girl. I don't always have to have it or try it. But I really do like the new content. I thought it was great, and it's just more gorgeousness. So, what did you think? Would you play just probably base game? You typically like just base games.
Yeah, but even so, the expansions that we did play, I felt like it added it just it used the same mechanism but changed it a little bit to make it a little more interesting or give it a little variety. I didn't feel like it made it that much more complex.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great production package, everything. Really enjoyed this one. Honeybuzz and Honeybuzz Fall Flavors. Atlantis Rising is a cooperative game where players must work together as a team in order to win. Send your faithful followers out to various places around the island to gather material resources and mystic energy, or to use advanced Atlantean technology and mysterious ancient artifacts. Using these resources and actions, you must work together to construct a cosmic gate capable of transporting the remaining population of the island to safety before your civilization is lost forever to the sea. The Atlantis Rising Monstrosities expansion introduces several new components that alter the base game experience, including changes to the base game's rules, new rules for allies and magic items, new rules for locations, and 3 scenarios that pit players against various classic monsters. So let's just do a quick overview of the base game and we'll talk a little bit about the expansion. So the base game, just kind of a basic cooperative game where you're trying to all basically not die, try to do things before the island floods in this case. The turn structure is pretty easy. There's 4 main steps. So first you're going to place out your Atlanteans. So everyone does this and there's multiple spots around the island, different peninsulas that allow you to do different things. So you're placing out your workers there. And then after that, you will suffer misfortunes where you draw from the not so good deck of cards and bad things happen. There's like basic misfortunes where basically it just it floods a tile on one of the peninsulas. And then there might be special misfortunes that do extra bad things, or who knows, like, get rid of all your resources, or, just stuff like that. And then there might be some cards that are like Calm Seas, where you can catch your breath, nothing bad happens.
After all the bad stuff happens, that's when you get to take the actions of the places where you've placed your Atlanteans. This is where you can acquire resources, you can get cards, you can take other actions depending on where you place them.
And you can also recruit some additional workers. Mm-hmm. And several of the resource areas are rolling a die. You have to get that number or higher to collect the resource. And basically you're trying to get all these resources to work together to build these components, which is going to go on this cosmic gate board. And once you built the 10th one, you can then build the power core. That's the objective.
After you take all of your actions, that's when you have to endure the wrath of gods, which just means that there's this tracker that's kind of moving up, and every time it does that, then you have to flood the number of tiles that it says on that tracker, which it's increasing throughout the game. So it kind of starts to get pretty quickly a little dangerous.
Yes. So the expansion Monstrosities has several things. It has modified rules for some of the base game stuff. It has a whole section of allies. It has a stack of allies that can potentially be recruited when you play that does additional things. I think one game you had a couple allies that you had recruited that gave you special abilities. I don't remember what they were, but there might be additional locations that come out where you can send workers to do things, and that might come up through cards or allies or different various ways. And there's also magic items that might be able to be built depending on if certain cards come out that allow you to do it, or if you're playing with, I forgot the character board that lets you build them, but you basically spend resources and it gives you some magical item that is good.
There are 3 different monster scenarios that you can play, one of which is Medusa, the other is Harpy's Lair, and hopefully I'm pronouncing this last one right, but Scylla and Charybdis. So a few different ways that you can do this and introduce these monstrosities.
And so with that, there are different kinds of setup, different things happen for each of those monsters. They all kind of play differently. There is going to be this additional phase that is after Suffer Misfortunes, where you're going to do the Monsters Act. So whichever scenario you're playing, it'll tell you exactly what happens with the Monsters Act phase. For instance, the Medusa might move around and petrify workers, which makes them inactive, and they just sit there and unless they get freed, or they just sit there for the whole game
Sit there and block
and they're
space
just
and
petrified.
yeah.
All right, so let's go straight into our thoughts now. Base game first. What do you think?
I think it's a good cooperative game. I like the idea of trying to survive the flooding, and I thought the art was good. I think you've got these peninsulas that it's a good idea. It just didn't feel like there was anything that draws me back to it again. That's just my thought and my opinion, and I don't have a good reason. It's just that something didn't hook me.
Yeah. So I'm kind of similar. I think it's a good cooperative game. If you like cooperative games, this might be one for you to try. I mean, I feel like this is a pretty good base game. And it is fun. Well, okay, so it's not fun when you're playing because you don't want the island to be flooded, but it's kind of cool seeing the progress of the flood, with the tiles flipping over. I think it's a really neat idea how that works. And of course, it's gorgeous. Elf Creek Games does a great job with their production. It's absolutely stunning, and the components are great. So I think for the base game, it sounds like we both like it, but it's not like jumping out at us to play over and over again. Now, the expansion.
Be nice.
So I'm a little frustrated with I think the setup was just bothering me too much that I just couldn't enjoy the game play as much because I was too frustrated from setting up. So what I struggled with is you have the base game rules, you have this rules, and then each rule book you have like rules adjustments for player counts, which are at a different location in each of the rule books. So you have to like flip over, and then you might have use a couple of different modules or change up, like use magic item card and stuff. It gives you the option to potentially swap out some Comp Cs cards for some other cards. You might have additional setup for the monsters depending on which scenario you have. There's also different difficulty scenarios set up in the back of this as well. So I usually really enjoy setting up games, but this one was just driving me nuts because I had both rule books out and I was having to flip here, flip here, flip here. Oh gosh, I missed the step, so I gotta like reshuffle, and it was driving me crazy. I just want all of the setup in like one area or something, and because there was just bits and pieces of things you can add and take out, adjust this here and there from the base, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I am going crazy.
Yeah, so ultimately your frustration was that the expansion doesn't just add something, it has to like replace things, or there's a lot of exchanging things, or making a scenario,
and it's not all in one place. There's like things you can do throughout the rule book that you can put in. It's not like all in one place, and I don't know. I just struggled for some reason.
I know you were checking the rule book a lot just during the setup.
Yeah, so. it was. Ugh. Now, with that said, I think you could get past that. After a play or two, you might be like, oh yeah, I figured out all of the setup, and I mean, but the first time setting up, I was just like, what am I'm going here, But after all that, I could see how people would enjoy this. It adds new, what are they called? Counselor boards? I can't remember what they're called. And like we've already talked about some of the things it adds, but the biggest thing being the different monsters that do different things. So people might like an additional complexity or additional things going on for the base game. For this one, I think for us, it would be a pass for this expansion. But some people might like it. It's still gorgeous. It has cool pieces. I'm just not a fan of the setup. So overall, that's our thoughts. I think we're like, oh yeah, this is a good game here. We weren't drawn to this one as much, but doesn't mean that you may not like it. So if it looks appealing to you, definitely check it out. That is Atlantis Rising and Atlantis Rising Monstrosities. In the White Castle, players take on the role of leaders of minor clans who vie for position and their clan's future in the court of the White Heron. Cunning and timely management of resources and the placement of family members within Himeji Castle will be the key to victory. This game is played over 3 rounds, and each player has 3 turns.
That's it.
So a total of 9 turns for each player. And on your turn, you're going to start with choosing a dice from one of the sides of the bridges. And there's 3 different colors of dice. If you choose the lower value dice on the left side of the bridge, you also get to trigger your lantern, which is a series of cards below your personal board, which have good things. So it'll give you resources, bump you up on the time track, or no, what is it called? The Heron track. Mm-hmm. So the lantern is always a good thing to trigger.
Yeah, especially if you've done a lot of work in the castle itself, if you've moved up into the castle, because when you move your people into the castle, that's when you're able to take cards out to put into your personal board where you're going to be able to activate them with that lantern.
So this game is driven with dice placement. So after you choose your dice from the bridge, then you're going to place it out on the board. There's multiple areas on the board. But the premise is you're going to place it on a spot, and there's values on the spots on the board. Mm-hmm. If the dice that you place is less than the value that's on the board, then you have to pay coins. If it's higher, then you get coins. So there's that trade-off. And so it's like, I really want to go there, but I don't have a die of that value. So it's just a lot of thinking about that as well. And in a 3 and 4 player game, you can actually stack. So if I had gone earlier to a spot and done whatever value my dice was, then he could put another dice on top of mine and do the whole coin difference off of that die. So the main part of the board is kind of the castle. So there's different levels, and you will be able to send out, what are they called? Courtiers to the castle, and they'll start in the lowest level, and you can kind of pay resources to kind of keep bumping them up, and that's a way to get more cards to put your player board, which will bump cards into your lantern area, and that will also be a way to score a lot of points in the game. And there are lots of different action spots to place dice in the castle, which are going to give you lots of benefits.
Another thing you can do is that you can recruit warriors that go into the training yard, and once they're in the training yard, that can add as like a multiplier to some of the courtiers that you have in your castle. So it's important to do that because it can kind of give you a little bit of an edge and increase the value of each one of those courtiers.
And you also get benefits when you go to the training yards as well. Then there's the well, which is a way to get coins and some other resources. There's also the gardens, where you can place out gardeners. There's a cost you have to pay to place them on the card, but it's going to give you more actions that you can do. And potentially they get triggered at the end of each round if you have a worker there and some dice left on the bridge. So a lot of these areas kind of interact with each other, and a lot of the actions kind of interact with each other, and you have your own player board where you can place your dice to trigger off actions, because you're going to be placing out these workers that are on your board, which are going to reveal resources and other goodies underneath the workers, and you can also set off some actions on the card that's on your board. So it just all kind of interacts. So at the end of the 3 rounds, whoever has the most points is the winner.
Ta-da!
And the main ways you're going to be getting points are the areas where your workers have been assigned. So the training yards, the multiplier for the castle, and whichever levels your workers are on in the castle will score you points. And points for your gardeners on the garden cards will also score your points. And wherever you are on the Heron track will also score you points. And leftover resources might score you some points as well.
So this game, I think, it checks off a lot of boxes. It's one of those that requires a lot of thought and planning, which sometimes I don't necessarily like, but in this game, for some reason, it works really well. And I don't know if it's just limitation of turns that makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's super tight.
You really gotta think about what you're doing and plan on certain things, and it just works. It just requires a lot of careful thought. I think the theme is really cool. I like kind of Asian themes and stuff like that, and I really like the White Castle. It's cool artwork. I'm a fan of it. It's kind of simple artwork. It's nothing like woo, but I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think this game is great. I really like this game. This is one of those that as soon as we were done playing, I'm like, can we play again? and that's usually a good sign that the game's good. I really like it a lot. I love dice placement games. I think this is a great one to add to our collection. I love the whole placing out dice and the difference in coins. Makes it thinky about where to go, and you can stack dice. And I love that bridge mechanism where like you want the high dice, but if you take that lower dice, you get to trigger
your lanterns.
off all your lantern card abilities. And yeah, I just love the way it all works together. The 9 turns makes it. I mean, I want to do everything, but I feel like I obviously can't. But I have fun trying my best to do as much as I can with only 9 turns.
Yeah, all of it, just the whole package of it,
it's really good.
It just works. It's really good. It was hard to figure out in the beginning because we're like, what do we do with only 9 turns? But after we played it a few more times, it was like, ooh, now we've kind of got a little bit of a strategy. We can kind of figure it out a little bit. Really enjoy it. I could see this. We recently did our top 50 games. I could see this landing in that top 20, 25.
It's a contender.
Region.
It's a contender. This is a really good game. My only complaint is I had a hard time fitting everything in the box, but hey, that is the White Castle. So that's our thoughts on these 4 games. So you gotta rank them 1 to 4.
1 to 4. 100% White Castle was my favorite. It's kind of interesting. These two might struggle, but for different might be similar, but for different reasons. I'd probably say Honey Buzz 2, España 3, and this one definitely last.
So I think for me, it's going to be definitely 1, definitely 2. This one is a struggle for me.
Gotta pick one.
I'm going to say base game 3 and then 4. If I'm doing the whole package, 3, 4.
There you go.
Well, guys, let us know which ones interest you the most, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.